It was my husband's birthday, and he wanted to keep things simple, just a small gathering of a few close friends at our home. I spent the day preparing light snacks, arranging drinks, and making sure the living room felt warm and welcoming. By the time everyone arrived, the house was buzzing with laughter and easy conversation. It felt like one of those nights where everyone was comfortable, relaxed, and happy to be there. My husband was locked in a deep conversation with his friend Mark, while Greg, his closest friend since college, kept the group entertained with his signature humor. Greg had always been the life of the party. His charm and quick wit made him practically family to us, which made what happened later all the more unexpected. At one point in the evening, I noticed we had run out of wine. I excused myself and went to the small storage room just off the living room where we kept our wine collection. Kneeling down to grab one of my husband's reserve bottles from the lower shelf, I suddenly heard footsteps behind me. Assuming it was my husband, I didn't even glance up. Then, out of nowhere, I felt a sharp, playful slap on my backside. Startled, I jumped to my feet and turned around, expecting to see my husband's teasing smile. Instead, I found Greg standing there with a mischievous grin and a wink, as though we were sharing some private joke. For a moment, I couldn't process what had just happened. This was Greg, our trusted friend, someone who had been part of our lives for years. His gesture was so casual, yet so inappropriate that I almost doubted myself. But the look in his eyes left no room for misinterpretation. I forced an awkward laugh, trying to downplay my shock, and Greg chuckled back. "Don't look so surprised. It's just for fun," he said lightly before strolling back to the others, leaving me frozen in place with the wine bottle in my hands. Returning to the living room, I told myself maybe he'd had too much to drink. Maybe it was just a harmless slip of judgment. But the unease lingered. Every time Greg's gaze lingered on me or he tossed out a comment that felt a little too flirtatious, I felt myself tighten with discomfort. Meanwhile, my husband remained unaware, completely absorbed in the festivities. I didn't want to ruin his birthday by causing a scene, but I also couldn't ignore what had happened. Eventually, I pulled him into the kitchen and told him everything in a low voice. At first, he looked stunned, almost disbelieving. "Are you sure it wasn't just a joke?" he asked cautiously. I shook my head. It didn't feel like one. Maybe he didn't mean to hurt me, but it crossed a line. I could see the conflict in my husband's eyes, torn between defending me and grappling with the fact that it was his best friend who had done this. After a pause, he nodded firmly and promised he'd handle it. When we rejoined the party, his demeanor had shifted. He didn't call Greg out directly, but he stayed close to me, keeping an arm around my shoulders or a hand at my waist. It was a quiet but unmistakable signal. Greg noticed. His usual easy confidence faltered, and though he kept trying to joke around, the tension was undeniable. As the night wound down and guests began leaving, Greg approached me looking sheepish. With his head slightly lowered, he mumbled an apology. He admitted he hadn't meant to make me uncomfortable, that he thought it was just playful. His regret seemed genuine, and while it didn't erase what had happened, it offered a small sense of closure. After everyone left, my husband and I sat together in the silence of the now empty living room. He reassured me that he'd speak to Greg directly, firmly, but without destroying their friendship, and that my comfort would always come first. In the days that followed, Greg reached out to both of us again, apologizing more sincerely and admitting that he'd let his playful nature cross a line. He promised it wouldn't happen again. Though we accepted his apology, the dynamic between us was never quite the same. Trust, once cracked, doesn't fully return. Still, the incident brought my husband and me closer. It deepened our awareness of each other's boundaries and strengthened our resolve to maintain respect in all our relationships. Greg remained in our lives, but the memory of that evening became a quiet reminder of how fragile trust can be and how important it is to protect it with honesty, boundaries, and communication.